Want to know how I booked this flight for $46 to Denver and this flight back home for $130 and this flight to Cancun for $99? Oh, what about this flight right here for $130 back home from Colombia? Yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so I only use 2 search engines to book my flights. So people that use Skyscanner, Hopper, Expedia, all of these other booking websites and whatnot, you do not need them because these are the only 2 that you will actually need. And these 2 are actually Google Flights and Skiplagged. So Google Flights actually has this nifty little thing called Explore. So when you actually go to Google Flights, let's head on over to the computer now. As you see here, it says round trip, Charlotte, and where to. But what I typically do is do one way. And I never really know when or where I really want to travel to. So obviously I live in Charlotte and I just do one way. And then I say, let's go February, because right now we have February, right? And I just want to see when's the cheapest flight anywhere in the US or even outside of the country in February. So flying from Charlotte, you see here, I can fly to New York for $52, Chicago for $49, Denver for $58, Las Vegas for $42. So these are really cheap flights. $49 to Austin. I flew round trip to Austin for $150 for Halloween. So $49 right now is actually very cheap. So if you click on these, it actually tells you on what day this is. So you see here it is with Frontier, go away, here, due on February 24th. And I actually need to go to Denver, but I think I'm going to DC this weekend, so I can't be booking this flight right now. But $58 isn't that bad. It does have one stop. Me personally, I can't stand layovers, so I would pay maybe the 76 for this, or just see how much round trip flights are. It just depends on my mood and how I'm feeling. But a 2-hour layover isn't that bad. So, but as you can see, this flight doesn't arrive until 4 o'clock in the morning, and so that's a little too late for me. I would just spend the extra $20 to fly and get there at the same day. But this also works for outside of the country. So this is how I booked my flight for $99 to Cancun. Typically when I travel outside of the country, I don't know when I'm coming back. I actually had my flight booked for my most recent trip, and I canceled that 3 weeks into my trip. I changed the flight and I kept pushing it back, and I just ended up canceling it. So I only book one-way flights now, and it helps me immensely. But like you see here, $90 right now to Cancun from Charlotte, $153 to Mexico City. To Guatemala, $100 right now for a one-way flight. To El Salvador, $60. So these are actually pretty cheap. Nicaragua is always expensive to fly to, and Havana as well. So I typically try not to fly to those countries. I'm actually going to Nicaragua in a couple of months, but I am taking the bus from Panama to Costa Rica to Nicaragua, because that bus is $50. Compared to our $411 plane ride. It's too much for me. Here you can go to Montego Bay in Jamaica for $88. So this is how I find all of my international flights going out of the country. Typically going out of the country is cheaper than coming back into the country, so I always use Google Flights when booking my flights outside of the country. If I really want to, I might check the other website, Skiplagged. $105. Ooh, this is a nice price, because the tickets were more expensive when I was looking at them. Here's $78 to Bogota in Colombia. You could go to Ecuador for $76, $567. That's too much. That's out of my budget. But $76 is pretty good. And so here's just an easy way to find flights. And you can change this to any month that you actually want. You can change it to March and see what the flights are in March. And it's around the same prices in March. I actually have a flight on March 21st to Colombia, and it's actually first class. The ticket was $100 for one way, and then a $160 upgrade, so that's actually really cool. I will be coming out with a vlog about that, so stay tuned. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. But this is how I find them all, and even to Europe, typically this is also really good. But to Europe, sometimes it's actually cheaper to book round-trip flights and try to book a round-trip flight that is kind of reasonable. If you say, yeah, you want to do 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it just really depends, because one-way flights to Europe, like you see, are around 400, 500, but round trips tend to be 500 as well. So it just depends on the type of traveler that you are. I try to, when I go to Europe, I try to make sure it's a ticket that I can change very flexible. And this actually works for anywhere in the country. So right now I live in Charlotte, which is why I have Charlotte. But let's just say if you live somewhere inside of the country like Denver, and see what's going on there in February. So right now from Denver in the month of February, you can fly to Atlanta for $55, New York for $55, Minneapolis for $29. And then out of the country, here's Cancun for $71, San Jose for $83. So these flights are actually very cheap no matter where you are in the country, and this is how I book them, and I recommend this to everyone. Let's even change it to Michigan. I don't know any of the airports in Michigan, so we'll just do Detroit. And looking from Detroit, here's 36 to Denver, 43 to Atlanta, to Mexico, Cancun is $90, San Jose $90, $88 to Bogota, and Colombia to Brazil. Brazil is actually very expensive, so I'm gonna show you guys a trick to find a Brazil, but this isn't too bad. $282 to Brazil. You have to realize that these flights to Brazil are long because it is so far away. So even this flight is 34 hours, but I will show you a way to actually get to Brazil for cheaper, because even if I put myself in Charlotte, the flights to Brazil are $766. That's actually very expensive. This is not a flight I would book because it is just way too pricey to Rio right now. It's just crazy. So I wouldn't do this at all, because I can fly to Peru for $159. But typically when I see flights kind of expensive like this, do not be afraid to book multiple flights. So I typically would book this Charlotte to Bogota, because Bogota is actually one of the hubs in South America. So it's pretty cheap to fly to a lot of the places that are expensive from the US from Bogota. So I would fly to Bogota. Let's see, here is $78. From Charlotte to Bogota, and I would arrive the next day at 2 p.m. This is a layover in Orlando. This probably isn't really a flight I would book, but just for argument's sake, this is just to show you guys. Here's another one for $132, but that's 3 stops in 24 hours. So these flights I kind of wouldn't book. I don't know why these flights are like this, but yeah, so maybe I would like fly the next day. Let's see if that changes anything. No, not really. So yeah, just for argument's sake, I would fly on the Wednesday, arrive on the Thursday to Bogota, and then I will look at Bogota to Rio and see what those flight prices are starting that Friday. And as you can see, they are $205 from Bogota to Rio. So even though I would have a layover in Orlando and probably stay the night again, well, these flights go at 9:50, so you could even go on the Thursday, because that flight landed at 2 p.m. So you don't even need to stay in Bogota here. But this is a 6-hour flight, and so you could just have that layover in Orlando and fly the same night to Brazil, and this is $205. So adding that with your flight, that is around $300 compared to that $800 flight that we actually just saw. So this is also what I do when I'm looking up flights to Europe if they're too expensive from Charlotte. I will look from New York, from New Jersey, from Boston, because Lisbon is super cheap from Boston. New York is a big hub. Atlanta is a big hub. So I just look at different airports, because I would rather save the $400 and book a flight to New Jersey or New York or whatever, because it's not going to be that much. It's not going to be $400 to fly there and then fly from those places there. so easy to do. Now coming home is a different story because flying to the US is actually very expensive sometimes. So I was just in Colombia for 2.5 weeks and Mexico for 3 weeks, and going home from Medellin, Colombia to Charlotte was very expensive because I kind of had a set day that I actually wanted. So let's look at some set days. Oh, these flights are actually pretty cheap. Well, see here to Charlotte, it is $400, and I was not willing to pay $400. I could have flown to Raleigh, but Raleigh is a 2-hour drive away from where I am. It's just not the type of price that I want to pay. And even to Colombia, which is a 2-hour drive, is $500. So this is when I actually use the other web engine, Skiplagged. So I use Skiplagged going one way from Medellin to Charlotte. And let's just say I was flying back because my flight was $130. Coming back, let's say I'm coming back February, because I booked my flight maybe 2 weeks before coming home because I knew I wanted to come home at a certain time. So doing 2 weeks from today, let it load a little bit and see what it says. $266 is actually pretty expensive. Okay, here we go. But these are 2 days. Woo! So here you see some flights for $177. This is actually kind of very pricey compared to what I paid and what I actually would pay. So what I would do in this situation is I would play around with the days a little bit. If you don't have any time to be flexible, then maybe this flight for $266 would be better than the $400 flight we just saw on Google Flights. But that's still a little bit too much money for me. I personally wouldn't book that, so I would play around with the days a little bit, see if I should fly home a day earlier, a day later, etc., because this is actually very pricey. See, just flying home 1 day later, you see the flight is now $200. And even here is 178. It's still loading, but I would get home a day later. I don't really want to do that. I would pay the extra $20 to fly with this one right here and come home for $200. It's not the $130 that I paid, but $200 is still better than $270 flying home the day before. And Colombia is so cheap, you can easily find a room for the night for $11 US. So I am saving $60 just for that. And I always use this one coming home. Leaving the country, not so much, because as you guys saw, leaving the country is so much cheaper than coming back. Now, I know a lot of people are like, what about the summertime? I travel a lot in the summer. This works just the same. So let's go to June and let's go back to Charlotte because that's where I'm living right now. And yes, flights are going to be more expensive then, but even still, you see there's flights for $66, $153 to Atlanta. I personally would just drive. $127 to New Orleans, $127 to Dallas. So these prices are a little bit more pricey than I would like to pay for in the US. But yeah, $69 to Vegas, $100 to Denver. So I would try to leave the country, honestly. $196 to Cancun is kind of a little bit pricey, so I would probably choose this $150 flight to Guatemala, $113 to Colombia. Let's go to Ecuador and see what the flight is here. $137 to Ecuador, and this is in June, so it is still very cheap to fly overseas. Obviously, Lima wouldn't be that appealing to me because it's $500. But again, you guys saw I would book a flight to Bogota and then try to fly somewhere else from there because it's just so much better. $150 to Panama, and that's just what I do. I'm actually flying to San Andres, and it was cheaper to book my flight to Bogota to San Andres that you guys see right here, and then afterwards I'm going to Panama. It was cheaper to book my flight from San Andres to Colombia and flying the same day to Panama. And that's what I'm doing, and that's how I book all my flights and get these super cheap deals. That $100 flight that I booked to Mexico, I have a video coming out about that very soon, about what it was like in Mexico for 3 weeks, and if this is the real Mexico. So if that sounds like something you're very interested in, then hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next week with a video on that. Peace out.